Today, we're diving into a case that honestly feels like it was ripped straight from a screenplay. It's a story about a missing mother, a family held together by some truly dark secrets, and a discovery that shocked even the most seasoned detectives.
And get this, that chilling quote, it came from the matriarch of the very family at the heart of this whole thing. It's a hauntingly perfect description of what was about to unfold, but at the time, nobody knew just how right she was.
So, our story really begins with Nicole Montalvo. She was a 33-year-old mother in Florida. And back in October of 2019, she did something thousands of parents do every single day. She dropped her son off with family. But the terrifying thing is, Nicole would never be seen alive again.
Yeah, things went from normal to terrifying fast. Nicole dropped off her son at the home of her estranged husband, Christopher Rivera. But when she didn't come back, when she missed an appointment at her son's school, everyone who knew her and loved her knew something was terribly, terribly wrong.
This, right here, became the #1 most important question for investigators. And you know what? The answer was actually pretty simple, and it immediately put the entire investigation on a very specific path.
All roads led back to the Rivera residence. It was the last place anyone could confirm she'd been, so naturally it became the very first place investigators started digging for answers.
Okay, so from the second detectives show up, things start feeling off. The Rivera family, they try to present this solid, unified front, but right away there were some pretty serious holes in their story.
So this is Christopher Rivera, Nicole's estranged husband, and he's really trying to sell this image of the worried man, deeply concerned for the mother of his child. At first glance, he seemed like he was going to cooperate.
But that whole act, it didn't last long. I mean, literally moments later, after getting a phone call, Christopher's cooperation just evaporated. He claimed he'd been told not to talk and walked right out of the sheriff's office, an action that, let's be honest, spoke way louder than his words.
So the family story was just a little too neat, They kept pushing this idea that Nicole had just packed up and left, that she needed a break. But investigators knew her. They knew her as a devoted mom, and they just weren't buying it. A mother like Nicole doesn't just vanish without a single word to her son. No way.
Now, with the family putting up a wall of silence, this case could have gone cold really fast. But investigators got a huge break from a totally unexpected source. Someone who was living right there, on the property, inside the house.
I want you to meet Diane Dean. She was just a tenant, renting a room in the Rivera house. The thing is, she wasn't family, she had no skin in the game, and her testimony was about to blow this whole case wide open.
What Diane saw that day, it painted a really disturbing picture. She remembered hearing the family matriarch, Wanda, in a loud argument with Nicole's son. She saw Wanda physically stop the little boy from going out to the backyard because she claimed they were working with heavy equipment. Diane also saw a bulldozer on the property. And then, later that night, she was woken up by a horrific smell.
And that testimony, it was the key that unlocked this entire case. Her mention of a bulldozer and that strange, awful smell, it gave investigators exactly what they needed to go back to the Rivera property, only this time with a whole new level of urgency.
So now, you can see the pieces just clicking into place. The tenant's story leads directly to a new search warrant, and that warrant led investigators right back to the family's backyard. And that's where they found the absolute unimaginable.
Just think about that. 3 days. That's all it took, from the moment Nicole was reported missing to the discovery of her remains, buried on the property of the very same family who claimed she had just up and left town.
Okay, so with this horrific truth finally out in the open, the focus snapped right to the family matriarch, Wanda Rivera. And in that interrogation room, she tried her best to control the story, but her attempts to cover for her family, well, they fell apart pretty quickly.
So during her questioning, Wanda's main play was to wrap herself in her faith. Over and over, she brought up being a devout Christian woman, acting just as shocked as everyone else. She's basically trying to build this wall of piety around herself.
But here's the thing. Investigators let her use a phone to call her pastor, for support. And on that recorded line, that whole facade just crumbled, and it revealed what she was really, truly concerned about.
And there it is. That's the moment. Her top priority wasn't the truth. It wasn't prayer for Nicole. It was damage control. She wasn't looking for spiritual guidance. She was literally using her pastor as a go-between to set up a legal defense and tell her other son, Nicholas, to lawyer up immediately.
So with the family's whole conspiracy laid bare, the case finally headed to the courtroom. A jury was going to have the final say on the absolutely horrific murder of Nicole Montalvo.
And when the verdicts came down, they were decisive. Christopher Rivera, Nicole's estranged husband, and his father, Angel Rivera, were both found guilty. They were sentenced to life in prison for their parts in Nicole's brutal murder and everything they did to cover it up. But what about Wanda, the matriarch? Well, in a move that I think frustrated a lot of people, prosecutors had to drop the charges against her. They said they just didn't have enough direct evidence to get a conviction, even though she had clearly tried to obstruct the entire investigation.
And that's where we're left, with this one final, chilling question. 2 men were convicted, sure, but the actions of the entire family point to a conspiracy of silence. It really makes you wonder just how deep that deception went and who else in that house of horrors knew the real truth about what happened to Nicole Montalvo.